The problem with Fortnite is it doesn't actually have any inherent value, and there's no money-making aspects.
That's right.
That's where you guys come in.
That's right.
Similar concept, right? That idea of a universe which encompasses multiple games with crossover elements. The difference being you own those elements and you can profit in-game from those elements in an actual realized digital economy. You are listening to 100X Gaming. It's Matthew, Cesar, and we've got Sinjin Jung with us representing my angry Yakuza girlfriend. That's pronounced MAYG, right? MAYG.
Yes.
We've got MAYG on the show. These guys were introduced to us by Shrapnel, our partners over at Shrapnel, building some awesome games, building a awesome game. One of our favorite ones we've had on the show so far. And we asked them, hey, who do we need to get on? Who should we talk to? Whose brain should we pick when we're talking about Web3 gaming? The first answer he gave was, there is someone in the Web3 gaming space that deserves like WWE level introductions, called you a myth, called you a legend. So we're excited to pick your brain, Sinjin. He was singing your praises. Welcome. Thanks for sitting down with us, man. Do you want to introduce MAYG? What you're building? You have a pretty unique game. I would say it's the first game that I've stumbled onto in Web3 that I thought, I don't even know what to compare that to. You guys are building something wholly unique. Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. In 2038, an asteroid collided with the moon. Now, years later, meteorites rain down upon the Earth like manna from heaven. You are an MEF operator with one goal in mind: collect the mysterious substance, compound Sigma, in the best gear you can find. Eliminate everyone in your path. It's the ultimate high-stakes treasure hunt, if you can extract alive. Built by leadership behind COD, Halo, BioShock, Ghost of Tsushima, and more, Shrapnel is the first moddable extraction shooter on the blockchain. Save Shrapnel on your epic wish list, get an extraction pack, or sign up now as early access is right around the corner. Find all the links in the description. Astrobit makes automated trading easier than ever. Connect to one of the integrated DEXs or centralized exchanges and start trading in minutes. Bring your own strategy in any language from anywhere. We also have you covered if you don't have a strategy. Browse our exclusive marketplace and find a strategy that fits your needs. Looking for a Bitcoin scalper, an ETH swing trader? Want to trade Doge automatically? Select one of the strategies built by experts and get started today. Life is hard. Crypto doesn't have to be. Set it, forget it, Astrobit. Use code 100X for 20% off your first month. Picture an app that bridges real-world experiences with Web3. MyGeo Tokens has patent-pending tech that turns any location into a world of digital collectibles where you connect with big-name brands, loyalty programs, exclusive content, and more. Launch NFTs anywhere with the MyGeo Tokens app. Fence, drop, and snag. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. If you want to join the adventure, listen to their episode with us or go to mygeotokens.com right now.
Yeah, it's an original PC game, and I think this has also been very difficult for us in the sense that I think a lot of gamers, younger gamers, have, this beautiful environment where, you have all these categories like FPS, MMR, MMO or MOBA and stuff like this, but, they haven't really encountered a fully original game for a while, or it's not the norm, except for in the indie space, I think there are.
Yeah.
But we are a turn-based third-person shooter. And as soon as I say that, people just go blank. And
I love shooters. I love turn-based games. I'm playing the Marvel, why did I just blank on the name? COVID brain. The Marvel card game that just came out recently. Yep, the third, it's not a shooter, but it's turn-based. I love turn-based games, but I've never seen those worlds blended together.
So actually it's there was this classic turn-based game called Worms, and that's what the game loop is based off of, where you're a little worm and you parachute down in this 2D map, and then you kind of have like these trajectory-based weapons or artillery-based weapons, and you blow them up. And so if you watched Ready Player One, there's the Holy Hand Grenade, and that's the ultimate weapon in Worms, and that's where it's from. And that game started in '95. They had literally like 7 series, they actually did even try to do, or they did make a 3D kind of third person kind of version of it. We've modernized it really to 2023, but essentially what it is that you are the granddaughter of the richest Oyabun mafia boss, Yakuza boss in Japan. And, your nerdy gamer boyfriend, designer or whatever, has been kidnapped. And now you're going to the club and you're going to beat the shit out of other ladies to rescue him back. And that's the premise of the game. Okay. And so the setting is that you're in this 20-foot square Tokyo nightclub with 4 or 5 levels and stuff like this. And your weapons, because you're a deadly assassin, because you've been raised that way, is anything. A credit card, a handbag, luxury luggage, champagne bottles, anything in your hand is a deadly weapon. And then basically you blow the shit out of the other girls and you blow up the club, right? And it's turn-based in that you get 20 seconds to act. And so once you've acted and you've either hid or you've shot your shot or whatever like that, then your turn is done. So a game like this is very unique in the sense that there's a move limit. So there's only so much you can run in this kind of 20 seconds, right? And if you think about what turn-based is actually, turn-based is simply giving you that kind of frozen moment where in that split second, now it's expanded to, 20 seconds or 30 seconds or indefinite, and you make your move, right? But if you were to kind of piece all the turn-based together, it would be, this kind of stop animation that just goes, right? So one of the main things in a turn-based game like this is there's no defense, right? Because when it's the other person's turn, you have line of sight on them, they're dead, right? They're gone. And so positioning and kind of getting to the right kind of end game or the mid game is very important in this game. But fundamentally, the controls are very straightforward. So it's just WASD keys. It's like as if you were playing Fortnite, but it's turn-based, and most of the weapons are all area-based explosions, right? So it's pretty fun, but the most important thing about this game is that we have a 3-player, 4-player, 5-player deathmatch, winner-take-all, and in the game you can talk to each other, and so there's a lot of social collusion. So let's say that Matthew and me are blowing the shit out of each other.
That's cool.
Yeah. And, basically Caesar's just hanging out and he's watching us demolish each other. And then we realize we get to 50% health and it's like, Caesar's not dead yet. Like, okay, fuck it. Let's blow the shit out of him first. And then we can get back to
I'm hiding behind the bar.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's right now on the market, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, it's the only game like this right now, as far as we can tell. And we've searched, obviously. And we wanted to make an original game. And, coming from really being a lifelong gamer and seeing all the trends, gaming is super highly competitive. Not only is it like a hit, driven industry, you need to stand out. And so, making Clash of Clans clone whatever, which is very easy to understand, might sound good in terms of like a 5-minute pitch deck, right? But in terms of actual competition in the gaming space and going for mass market eventually, right? You're never gonna get anywhere, right? You're never gonna stand out, And so that was one of the major considerations of having something completely original. But in having something completely original as well, you could also have a lot of leeway in creating an economy that would work with something original from scratch, right?
Do you feel like, and some context for why I am thinking this question, I don't think I've ever picked up a game because it was like something else. And I've played way too many games in my life. Even my bachelor party, man, ended with a LAN game night with my boys. And so that's the way my life has always gone.
You're a man after my own heart.
Yes, man. I love gaming. And so might not always come across as the nerd, but I am one. And so I think that's been my world forever. And I've played a lot of different games. And when I got really into Fortnite, it wasn't because it was like Call of Duty. It was because it was fun. It was just a blast. It didn't take itself too seriously. I usually was not into real cartoony games like Fortnite. Didn't care. It was a blast and I had fun. And I like that you guys don't take yourselves too seriously. When I'm looking at the gameplay, it looks like it is wholly just based on let's just have fun. And I think a lot of games miss that point right now. Caesar and I have talked about that so much, that we've been asking that question like behind the scenes ourselves so many times when we're like, oh, we have an opportunity to talk to another game. And the question we're asking is like, but would that actually be fun? Like, is it a cool idea? Sure. Is it a cool concept? Sure. Are they doing fun things with tokens and there's ways to make money? Sure. But am I going to have fun? Because I think at the end of the day, when I'm looking at gameplay, if I'm not going to have fun playing with my friends on a Friday night, what's the point? Like, I'll go to work if I want to make money, as much as but I would love to make money playing something that I'm having fun in. So I'm curious, like creating a brand new concept. You're blending together genres. Where's like gameplay at? Are people playing it? What is the reception to playing something new?
So
are people having fun in Discord?
Yeah, I love this question because we, it took us 18 months to get to our pre-beta, and it's been fully playable with our servers online 24/7 since May when we launched our alpha. And all our development has been on gameplay mechanics, integrating the weapons, integrating the level design, so on and so forth. And for a turn-based game, the level design for us is like 80% of the game, actually, right? And it's not pay to win. I hate fucking pay to win games because I'm a competitive gamer, right? And so, but getting the game mechanics right so the game itself stands on its own, so it's fun, right? That's entirely what we focused all of our development on. So our game looks like it was made in the 1990s for the most part, up to about May. So we started game development in earnest in May 2021. And it wasn't until May 2023 it was somewhat polished. And the reason for that was because, competitive gamers, and let's say that you're playing like for whatever, $10,000, servers are in, whatever, Chicago, and you're in like Colombia, right? Same time zone, it's not too bad. What are you going to do? You're going to turn all your NVIDIA settings to high performance and fuck the graphics, right? As long as you
low,
see your reticle.
I play everything on low.
Yeah, exactly. And I did too for the longest time, except my CTO one time was like, the engine can handle, the NVIDIA can handle it more. That was so
I play non-competitive games on high. If I'm playing single player, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
If I'm competing, it looks like dirt.
Exactly. And so when we had finished our first vertical slice, where we finally put everything together, and a vertical slice is basically not just a playable demo, but basically it has the login. You can actually start the match, and it has win conditions, and you lose, and then you can restart to the next match. I had talked to this one Web3 game influencer, and he said that he knew a lot about game development, and he said, and by this time it had been October when we released it, so May, June, July, October, like maybe like whatever, 7 months we got to our first vertical slice, which is really quick, right? And he said, the first thing he says, oh, the graphics are not very good. And I'm like, oh my God. Like he completely missed the point of what we're trying to do. So we spent all our time on the game mechanics, because ultimately this is that fun is what your market is, meaning that like whoever finds your game fun, especially as a new game, that's what your market is. And so I get a lot of these questions from VCs all the time when I meet them. And we've not taken any VC funding because sometimes they're like too annoying for me. And what they want is not exactly what I want, especially as a game developer, right? Like really, truly. And they'll say, hey, Sinjin, what's your product market fit? It's like almost like the second or third question they ask, right? And I'm like, I can tell you what the player personas is, right? But for an original PC game, right? I don't know what the product market fit is, because the product market fit will be defined by who finds the game truly fun, right? Is this game like truly fun among middle-aged moms, or is it really fun against like 18-year-old, like whatever, frat boys? I'm not entirely sure, but once I find that out, that's going to be our product market fit, because ultimately a game is what drives people to have, these transactions that everyone's looking for tokens and stuff like that, because the entertainment value, right? You take that away, you need to incentivize them for every fucking thing they're doing, right? And then where does that leave you? Because the next game that comes in and incentivizes them just a little better, rewards them just a little better, your game's in the dust, right? And you can't fuel a game based on rewards, right? It's just not possible, because at the end of the day, you'll end up with one type of player who's just very extractive. And now, if you want to try to make the game more balanced and fun, what's going to happen is that you're going to try to protect against these exploiters and stuff like that. But because the game's not fun in the first place, everything that was kind of fun or kind of interesting, you're going to dumb it down, right? And then the game definitely is not fun, right? Like a game that's too balanced, and the easiest way to balance a game is basically decrease the abilities of everybody, right? And then everyone's not really that, there's no real strong combo in the game, but then it's just boring as fuck, right? So yeah, for us, it was all about fun first. And the other thing that I think a lot of people, they don't get is that, like, when you polish a game very early, which a lot of Web3 games do because they want to show a beautiful game to start off with that wows people, that looks like the trailer, that has nothing to do with the game, but they want to keep that quality up there, right? You're adding on all this poly count and all this load because of the graphics. But if you haven't done anything with the gameplay yet, you've just basically done it backwards. So generally speaking is that when you're in development pre-alpha and then you add in a new feature, it literally breaks the game. Like suddenly there'll be an invisible wall inside the game. You don't even know why. You added this weapon that has nothing to do with the environment, and then the bug comes up, right? And then you have to spend 2 to 3 days to get all these bugs out. So if you're developing a game in open and you've polished it first, right, you've actually made your process so much harder to kind of, move forward with the game. And so, yeah, for us, gameplay, making it fun first was absolutely the entire point. And the reality is, once the game is done, you can polish and optimize it for the next 2 years, right? And you look at Fortnite. Fortnite, when it first came out, it was kind of janky here and there, so on and so forth, right? I played it 4 years later because, my kids were in pandemic and they were, just playing Fortnite, and they're like, Dad, can we play? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to play this crappy game. And it wasn't crappy. It was so much smoother. And the fact that, when Fortnite, had this massive turnaround when they were able to introduce skins that were in a different design style than what original Fortnite stuff was, where they put in Dragon Ball Z and stuff and put in, wow.
Yeah, right? Man, I've got Invincible. I've got Captain America. I've got Superman. I've got the Ninja Turtles. I've wasted a lot of time on Fortnite. I know that's like a kid's game.
I got into it. I have Darth Vader. And, dude,
I got Darth Vader. I love it. It's like my wife and I play with our friends on the West Coast probably 3 nights a week. It's such an easy game to just pick up and play. Mm-hmm. And I mean, while we're on this point of like fun versus balance adjustment, Fortnite's a great example that I've played that game fairly consistently since launch, basically. So I don't know, like 5 years or something. Yeah. And they have struggled with that, I would say. What they are really good at is being fun for the common casual player. Usually, though, it's the person who is competitive that kind of gets punched in the throat by Fortnite developers. And they stay because the money. So you talk about like, hey, incentivization versus fun. I think the casual player in Fortnite has a ton of fun. The competitive player, it kind of depends on the balance of that season, but they're staying because Fortnite throws millions of dollars at the competitive scene, more so than any other esport in history. Nobody's giving away more money easier than Fortnite is when it comes to Web2 games. And so I think that's how they keep them. But it would, as someone who played in, not anymore, but played in the competitive scene for a hot minute, man, I would have loved it if they just made it fun for competitive players as well. But I know that like we're a minority in the game space, probably 1% of their player base. How do you guys balance like making it fun is it designed for competitive players? Like, do you see yourselves having a competitive scene or an esports scene, or do you see it as casual fun?
So we're a social casual game per se, but much in the way that poker is as well. Okay. Yeah. So poker's crazy because it's one of the few games where anyone from any skill level can sit down and play together. You don't need an MMR rating. But how poker differentiates the skill level is by self-differentiation, meaning that, like, how much do I want to risk? Am I like a high-stakes player or am I a low micro-stakes penny player, right? And a lot of players will have a lot more fun playing a game with a poker game with a $10 buy-in. Whereas guys who basically need to risk money, at $10, they're going to fucking dunk off of their chips because they don't give a shit. It's just fucking $10. But when it's like $10,000, oh fuck, then this is a game that it's much more serious for them, and they have more fun. Basically thinking that, you know, whatever money that they're going to win off their friends, they're going to go buy a leather jacket the next day and flaunt it in front of their face and try to win more of their money off of, right? And so poker is a perfect example of a game that is able to have casual and competitive players play at the same time, but eventually it has paths where obviously the competitive players will want to play at a higher level. But what's interesting about poker is that even though you're playing at a higher level, those people who may not be as good but still get a thrill from playing at a higher stakes can still do that. So back in the early 2000s, there was a very awesome poker playing billionaire who just loved poker. And he invited all these poker pros to his plays, you know, like Phil Ivey and John Juanda and Eric Lindgren back in the day. And these guys would play this billionaire. But the thing is, the billionaire set the buy-in that was so high that even the pros felt uncomfortable playing at that limit. And this guy was actually able to beat them the very first couple of times playing, because these guys were unused to playing at that high limit, because, you know, they were getting people staking them. Like, it wasn't just their money. They had gotten people to stake them because they're like, we're going to take this billionaire fish out and take all his money. But because it was so much money, even though the guy was a subpar player, his risk tolerance was so much higher. So he could play optimally when these other guys couldn't. So in a game like Fortnite, it's very difficult because you have 100-man, FFA deathmatch, right? And so MMR really does matter, because, like, if I was going to play you, and I'm old, so my Twitch skills are dead, right? Like, the first thing I do is I pick up a shotgun that has a good reload time, and I always get the prime shotgun. It works for me. And I wait till the guy jumps and I shoot him. Wait till the guy jumps and I shoot him. It's very easy. And I literally get close because I don't have the Twitch skills. But if I was to play you, and you've been playing like semi-pro, right? You're going to camp somewhere. I'm going to come in and I'm going to get headshot. I didn't even know where I got headshot. And for a social player, that's the worst experience ever. I don't even know how I died. Or like, you know, fighting some guy and he just built like fucking sweaty, like 5 levels, and he jumps behind you and he kills you, right? You don't even know where the guy killed you from, except like afterwards you see the end screen where he's looting your body, right? So that makes it a lot more difficult. And the way that Fortnite has actually solved that to some degree, which still pisses off the competitive players, is something like a rift grenade, right? Or a mech suit or something like that. So for certain seasons, right, there's too many OP weapons in the game. But what happens is that the OP weapons allow for a casual game player to engage and really see if they really want to upgrade their skill level. And then you'll see in the next season, there's less OP weapons and less OP weapons. So they do it in a scale. You can see that, right? And that's how they kind of try to upskill like the players that are there who are having fun. But ultimately, a game is like, if you're doing a multiplayer game that's somewhat competitive, right? There needs to be an aspirational aspect to it. So for our particular game, getting to it is that basically we structured it like poker, right? So the first game that you first start off with is only 3 players, right? And so, like, if you're playing against 3 players and the weapons are fairly OP, you'll get lucky, right? You'll get lucky and you'll be able to kill the guy, right? But when you're playing the higher stakes rounds, right, which are 4-player and 5-player, right, there's more skill involved there. But if you just want to play and just screw around and have fun with your friends, you can do that as well. And so our game is extremely easy to learn. Like, you'll get the mechanics done in about maybe 3 games of playing. Like, maybe after 45 minutes, you'll be fully competent in the game, except for learning the map, right? But in terms of how competitive do you want to get to, right? That is, infinitely competitive. Not because the game skill cap is that high. It's about how much do you want to end up risking in the game, right? And that kind of gets into our economy. And I think that's the beautiful thing is that, you know, here's a really interesting thing is, like, if we were to play 21 without chips, okay, or anything on the line, okay, we would play for fuck all 10 minutes and then you would be like, this is boring as shit. Like, at least play for shots, right?
Yeah, because you hit every single time. Yeah,
and we don't care because we're not really risking anything, right? But let's say that I said, hey guys, I'll be the house and we're going to play with 1 deck, right? And we'll play with chips. You guys would want to play with me for the next 10 years to take all the money I have, right? With a single deck of blackjack, because it would be so easy to count, right? So the chips in that particular game, like blackjack or poker, and introducing that sense of risk, and reward is 90% of the game, even though the game is fundamentally quite simple. And that's what we've kind of decided with the concept for our game, because we realized that we wanted to get the game out within a year and a half, 2 years. And so the scope is pretty tight, but, a lot of it is the risk and reward that we've added into the game to make it, competitive.
Okay. I have a question here because I think it's a very good analogy and a very good comparison to poker, because like the game that you just mentioned, like your game, poker is very easy to pick up. I think anyone can learn the simple rules of what cards is better, what hands is better, and then you can just go from there. Every time you get aces, you go all in. Every time you have a 7 and a 2, you fold. It can get to really simple, but then once you get to those high stakes and you really got to be competitive, then you start learning the GTO of it, right? You start learning the very specifics. When am I supposed to fold? When am I supposed to raise? How much am I supposed to raise? But at the very simple, it's still the same game. With your game, I feel like the difference is once you get to a certain point and then you start adding weapons, then you start changing sort of not the rules to the game, but the way that the game can be played, because you start adding new mechanics that maybe poker can't add because they don't add new rules. Then it becomes a different game, right? Then it becomes a variation of poker. With your game, how do you focus on going back to the Fortnite analogy and just pretty much any BR right now in the space is every time they introduce a new weapon, a new mechanic, it seems like in their boardroom, they say, hey, let's introduce a new weapon. Let's make it OP. Let's make everyone hate their life for the next 2 weeks just because we want people to try this new weapon. And everyone is just running around with the Kimbos and in Call of Duty, one-shotting every single one in the map. And then they decide to balance it. How are you guys going to go ahead and sort of balance that between like, hey, we're going to have hopefully a competitive scene one day where people are actually taking this game seriously, really mastering the mechanics and the gameplay. But we also want to make sure we throw something for the new players that are just coming in for them to be able to pick up halfway through the match and then just have a chance to at least compete with those players. How do you make that balance of like, hey, are we going to sort of tailor more towards the people that are taking this game a little bit more seriously and actually competing? Or are we just going to try to throw a lifeline to new players to try to entice them in and get them into that game loop?
Okay, so, these are two really, really fundamentally different games. And it's because Fortnite is fundamentally a metaverse, like free-for-all, right? You can do whatever you want. You can drive. You can go wherever you want. The only thing, the real innovation there is the circle, right? The storm circle, right? Which forces you to ultimately play one-on-one and mano-a-mano, basically. Because at the end of the day, you're in this small space and it's just a gunfight, right? So it brings you down to that one point, right? But before then, you have all this optionality, right? Whereas in the game of poker is designed in such a way that the game never changes. But what does change is how you bet and when you bet, right? So it's about positioning and the risk that you will take at that certain moment. And so that's the kind of game that we have, right? And so if you play poker for the first time with your friends, okay, 9-handed, you have like 3-2 offsuit, okay? And you're like, your first act, okay? And you decide, fuck it, I'm going to go all in, okay? Your friends are like, he went in all in, I'm going to go all in. And then everyone's all in, right? So at this point, like you've made no consideration for risk. And because you just want to have excitement and fun and everyone else is willing to have excitement and fun with you, they've gone all in. And that's a very different game than when it's super high stakes, 9-handed, you're at the final table of the WSOP, right? And you're not going to play a hand unless you're the last act. You're on the button or whatever like that, right? And whether or not you have a good hand or a bad hand, because of your position, you're going to pop that pot to try to steal it, right? Or not, because it's the final table. There's so much risk, right? So in the same way, like each of the weapons in our game are already balanced for a specific use case, right? And so there are certain weapons that are OP powerful. Like we have a tactical like luggage carry-on nuke, okay? And it does huge splash damage. It does like a massive amount of knockback damage. And if you nail one person with it, right, there's a good chance you'll take off 90 or 80% of their health right away, right? Now, when you're a newbie player, you're going to throw out the suitcase whenever you can. And there's only 2 that you get as your ammo, okay? Instead of throwing like a champagne ball that's like a grenade or whatever like this, right? But by doing so, when you get down, let's say you're playing 5 players and you just use the weapon to kill one guy for fun and shits and giggles, right? But later on, when there's 2 players left, well, 3 players left, including yourself, and you have a chance to blast both of them, you can't because you've already run out of that weapon, right? So choosing when to use the weapons at what time and what will be optimal for you to get to the end game, right? That's where the skill comes in, right? And so I think in some ways, the most beautiful games are very simplistic at the beginning, right? But as you play it, there's a level of depth that you didn't realize. And if the depth is only based on a weapon or getting the right weapon or getting in the right position for that one sniper shot or, so on and so forth, right? It's so easy to see that and game it, right? Or be frustrated by it. So like, I know one time there was mechs in Fortnite and Ninja fucking went, he just fucking
I went berserk, man.
Yeah.
I hated the mechs in Fortnite.
Right. So what did every fucking noob do? They went and looked for the mech, right? First and foremost, right? And so when you introduce that kind of mechanic that's based off of an OP weapon rather than positioning, right? Then it's so obvious what's going to happen, and it's not fun. It's only fun for the person who gets it, right? But if you create a game where it's about like almost resource management and timing and positioning to get to a certain point where, okay, I have all these weapons, but I'm going to save them for mid-game, or I'm going to save them when it's like, there's only 2 people left, or so on and so forth, right? Then the game automatically gets depth while being the same game because the stakes or the competitiveness gets higher, right? And I think that's very hard to explain to gamers in general because we do that very instinctively. Depending on which game it is, we change, right? But like as a game designer, right? Like if I was to say like Fortnite, how do you fix Fortnite? I mean, like so that there's a competitive thing to it, right? Like obviously you just take out all the OP weapons, right? But in that case, I would never play against you guys because I just get headshot all the time from like, 2 miles away.
That's the solution. You just separate the scenes. They've already slightly done that. I think they just need to double down on that.
But when you separate it, right, then like the bad players never get any better, and the good players, it becomes like chess. So that if you're like 1% better than the other guy, that other guy will never win, right? So one other thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be an element of luck in a game where skill can overcome that. Not all the time, but it can overcome that. And when there's an element of luck, then, the newbie player feels like, hey, there's a puncher's chance here, right? And that will allow them to keep playing and upgrade. And that will also allow the competitive player to feed off the newbie players every once in a while, pick up that, golden weapon, the legendary weapon or mythical weapon that guy raced to pick up from the vault, right? From like on the fringe of the map. And that will empower you to actually be more competitive against the other, competitive players, right? So the one major thing for every single game is that you need a mix of players. You need the competitive, you need the newbie, you need the intermediary, you need the guy who just wants to break down trees all the time and have them 99 max materials for whatever reason, right? You need all of those guys to make a very beautiful game, right? And I would say like, obviously, how many hit games are there per year that you play more than like 3 or 4 years later? Fortnite, World of Warcraft?
Very few.
Very few. Because it has to be good enough that all players can access it at one point. Because once you separate it, it becomes either like chess or slots, right?
Yeah, and I think, what you tap into there is interesting to me because, I think about like if you misbalance that at all, that's how you give your game a 1-year life cycle. I think about, for example, if anyone listening has heard of Rogue Company, I played the heck out of it for 1 year and then stopped playing it because they tapped too heavily into the luck element of like, let's just make sure the bad player can win. But then it was like, well, now it's like 70% of the game is luck, and that's not fun for somebody who wants to get
exactly.
better. And so I like that you're tapping into the element of positioning. That reminds me a lot of, I'm really into board games too. That reminds me a lot of like some of the board games I play. It reminds me a lot actually of, if you didn't play the competitive side of Fortnite, I don't think people would know this. I think like 70% of the game comes down to positioning in Fortnite, like late game zones. And that is the element of luck. If like, hey, if I can figure out how to predict the way that the zones are going to move and put myself in the right spot so that I can take advantage of it, like that's the winning itself. And so, that's essentially what you guys are tapping into. And you keep bringing in this notion of let's compare it to poker more so than other video games that are around. I'm curious where that comes from, because I know you have a background in poker.
Yeah.
So did you design the game intentionally to be like poker-esque? What does that look like? And what's your background in poker?
Yeah, so I was the regional director of a company called PokerStars, and for Asia at one point, that was the biggest poker company in the world. In 2009, we got 1.1 billion in revenue, with a fucking crazy 89% profit margin, right? And I came into the company 2007, was the regional director in Asia, where no one played any poker. So at that time, there was not worldwide 24-hour poker liquidity. And I introduced the entire game to poker to Asia, flew 90 flights a year for a couple of years. I legalized poker in Macau, introduced it to China through Macau and, these other countries. And so my game design background is really into card games. Afterwards, I became an advisor for the Olympic Committee in China for mind games, specifically card games. And so card game design is very, very neat because a lot of the card games, again, as well, like whether it's Hearts, Euchre, Chodadi, Doidiju, whatever like that, these games have been around for a very, very long time in their variances, right? But where the innovation comes, especially for online, is the format, right? So heads up, 6-handed, multi-table tournament, sit and goes and so on and so forth, right? And so if you can create a video game that's like a card game, right? That has certain, known structural elements, but can be changed by how much risk you want to take or how you want to position yourself or how you want to even cooperate or collude with other players, right? Then the game itself is not that difficult. Where it expands is as the player base expands, then you can end up doing multi-table tournaments. You can do sit and goes. You can do shorthanded, whatever like that. And that's where the format really happens. And so, a lot of the game elements in this particular game come from actually poker. But you look at it and you're this has nothing to do with poker, right? These are women blowing the shit out of each other.
I don't remember any nukes in poker.
Yeah, exactly. But the elements are still there, right? It's a known game that you go into, but when you play poker, what ends up happening, specifically Texas Hold'em poker, is that even though there's 52 decks in the card, whatever comes out on the flop, those 3 cards can be different at every time. So in our game, the nightclub starts as this beautiful nightclub every time, but the entire nightclub is completely destructible, right? And how it destructs is completely random. So when you break something in Fortnite, whether there's a tree or a door or a wall, it always breaks in the exact same way, right? But in ours, it breaks in a totally random way. So you can play this game 1,000,000 times, and the battlefield will be totally different 1,000,000 times over, right? But your weapons are always the same. So when the environment changes a little bit, right? Like a flop comes out and you have top pair, okay? And it comes out just a rainbow of crappy cards, right? That are, not connected or whatever like that. That your top pair is going to hold up, right? But let's say that you have a bottom pair of whatever, 6s, okay? And the flop comes out Jack, King, Queen. You're screwed, you're screwed. Because that board will have hit someone else's Jack or King or Queen that they're holding in their hold cards, right? Sorry if it's getting too pokery. I mean, I think, Caesar, you definitely play poker. Matthew, how about yourself?
Yeah, I do too.
So you guys get the lingo and all this other stuff. I mean, when we're talking StarCraft, I could talk the same way as well, right? Being Korean, that's very stereotypical, but very true as well, right? So in doing so, it's if something's got to change. So if the environment is different every time, right? Or, you look at Fortnite, right? So now the new innovation in Fortnite is that it used to just get smaller and smaller towards 1 or 2 points in the middle. Now it gets smaller with the circle changing and the storm moving the circle towards something else, right? And that has taken that exact same environment, but forcing you now to look at the environment differently, right? And so, we as gamers, we tend to look at the variables as yourself and your weapons, yourself and your items, right? We don't look at the environment, but the reality is that level design for certain games is 99% of the game, really.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I have a question here because when you talk about sort of the different game modes that then you can then have, right? So you start off with the sort of the basic game that you have where everyone's in the nightclub. You have 3 to 5 players. You're all battling it out to be the last girl alive, the last girlfriend alive. how do you level up from that to then create all these different game modes? I imagine with that, you will then need a lot of different players to be playing the game modes, because if there's not a lot of players playing the sort of base game, then there really isn't sort of a drive for you guys to go ahead and develop all these other different game modes, 1v1s or like different kinds of variations to the main game. What are you guys doing to go ahead and bring in new players to actually fall in love with the first sort of iteration of the game, to then be able to say, all right, now we have enough players, let's start introducing them to these other ideas and other formats that we've been having sort of in the back end for us to actually start pushing out?
Yeah, so there's two parts of that question. So for me, or in terms of the answer, is that number one is like, so now it gets really heavily into kind of the economy of, what a Web3 game is and why we think that we've kind of cracked it as a sustainable economy, is that the very first round that you are going to play is a 3-player round. Everyone plays a 3-player round, because when you play that game, it's pretty much a play to earn like setup, right? You have 10 energy per day, and they replenish every 24 hours, and then you use 1 energy and you play against 3 players and you win GLB, our gold love bracelet, okay? Our in-game token, okay? So winner take all, you played for free basically, and then you get this in-game token, right? Let's just call it gold, okay? But the second match that you're going to play is that you're going to use that gold that you won from the first game to again play against other players to win our ERC20 token, right? And that's 4 players. So that's slightly harder. So the skill element is getting there, but now you're risking something that you won in the first game. So now you've actually introduced risk into the game. The problem with play to earn before was there was no risk involved. Like, you won when you won and you got something, but you didn't lose anything because you didn't actually risk anything because the energy was free, right? You use your time and stuff like that. There was no risk, right? So we've introduced one element of risk. And then when you play the 5-player game, right, you're basically entering with your ERC20 token, the MAYG token, and then you're going to win more MAYG tokens, right? And that becomes a full risk on game, as if you're playing a poker tournament, right? And we have the mechanisms to kind of move the players through. But what ends up happening is that, why play to earn has been so hard to figure out is because people, they don't want to lose that mass incentive of, hell, like, I can just win this token for no risk at all. It's like having an unlimited amount of poker free rolls, right? If you did that in a poker set, you go bankrupt, right? But the whole point of a poker free roll is to engage that player to start playing other than free rolls, but actual real, cash games or tournaments, right? For real money, even if it's like 1 cent, 2 cents, right? So in the same way, the free rolls push players to learn how to risk, right? In a game that's slightly more difficult than the first game, right? And then the last game is fully risked on for like, triple the rewards, right? In a game that's, 5 players, right? And so I think the second part of that question is, or the answer is that everyone looks at these mega games like Fortnite, okay? And they're like, okay, we need to do 100-person, like, whatever, battle royale, right? Fuck, that's a big ask from starting, right? Like, people, they don't realize and they forget, like, because they're being financed by VCs or by funders or whatever like that. And you say, we're going to be as good as Fortnite, okay? And we're going to get there in this many months, right? But Fortnite pivoted to the battle royale, right? And, it took a while for them to really pick up. Not too much, because they had first mover advantage and, PUBG had been out there, whatever like that. And this appealed to kind of more of a younger crowd as well, right? More open appeal. But we forget that games need a hardcore user base first, and then you expand. And so once we have this one loop going, what we're going to do is that we're going to expand it like a poker lobby, where instead of just having 1 energy buy-in for the first round, right, you'll have 2 or 3 or 4. So then you'll end up having like low stakes, mid stakes, high stakes, right? And then later on, when we get enough liquidity, we'll do multi-table tournaments, right? And then, or sit and goes. So once you have enough player liquidity and they've maxed out like the initial kind of formats, that's kind of where the innovation comes. And that's where it's, kind of my job as in live ops to kind of guide these players to, playing it. But one really good thing about our game is that there's no staking in it. And there's no necessary for staking of these tokens, because if there's enough variance, but skill will trump the variance over time, like poker, right? What does that what happens? Players have to have a bankroll, or they can't max their win out, right? So if you develop a game like chess, and you know, like that Universal Chess, they just fucked off with the 15 million or whatever like that, right? Because they're like, we can't figure this shit out. You can't make a gambling site on chess. It's not possible because it's too fucking skill based. So if the people's MMR ratings are not exact, even if they're 1% higher, that player will never beat this player. Never. Right. And so, you know, like it just simply won't go anywhere. Right. But when you have skill over time, so like even Doyle Brunson said this, right? Like, if I sit at a poker table and I try to prove to somebody I'm a better poker player, I'm going to lose all my money, right? But if I play this guy for 1 week, right, I'll have his wife, his dog, his mistress, his car, and his house, right? And so we designed the game where the luck element decreases as you go up the stakes, right? So to answer your point before, Matthew, is like, how do we keep them all engaged? That's how we go. So will the less skillful players want to play the more skillful games? Yeah, they'll have no choice to, but they will not play as much. But the aspirational players, what we'll do for them is we'll keep increasing the stakes. So right now there's a 3-player room, a 4-player room, 5-player room, right? But a 10-player room will be more difficult than a 5-player room. And we just keep on adding complexity there. Bigger maps, smaller maps, more ammo for the weapons, so on and so forth. And this is where, like, it's very important that you should be able to create a game which already has all the levers at the beginning, right? And once they have all the levers at the beginning, then you can add it in, right? So one major lever for Fortnite is the Storm Circle. So imagine if the Storm Circle actually didn't give you as much time to like hunt around and get items. How would that change the game? Fundamentally, it would change it like huge, right? Or the Storm Circle did less damage or it did more damage. Right.
Yeah, I mean it actually works that way in comp, right? Like in competitive, your late game circles go further and move faster. And if you threw that, and they've tried throwing that into the main public game modes, and everyone on Twitter and everyone on Discord and everyone on Reddit just rages because I'm dying to the storm every time. But in the high level, it's like, yeah, dude, that's the point. Like, move with the zone.
That's right.
And so, yes, good example of, if you implement those things in high skill lobbies, it's a tool that is used well. If you implement it in the public lobbies, you just piss them off.
But even if you were to do this in the sense that, like, let's say for Fortnite specifically, right? Like, it's just like poker tournaments, right? So like the first 2 blind levels are like pathetic, right? It's like 2 hours, then blinds don't go up, whatever. And so the noobs can do whatever they want. They can dick around. They can 4-bet, whatever like this, and feel like they're a champion. And they're like 10K high stakes, you know, stacked with like $1 bets, right? Yeah. But come to the final table and the blinds are like 1,200, 1,000, 2,000, right? You can't do that. And the blinds are going up every hour because it's shot for TV. You can't keep this game going forever or the casino's going to shut down, right? And you have to play more aggressively when you get to the final table, right? And so in the same way in the Fortnite is that if the first 2 like storms are like doing no damage, which it does, right? Like the first 2 levels, the damage is like nothing. You can hang out and you could still dance around and whatever like this and in the storm and you'd be fine. And you just, you know, whatever, eat an apple and you're good to go, right? But come like the next one, like you step out of the storm for like 5 seconds, man, half of your health is gone, right? So exactly that.
I gotta say, I'll let you ask your question. This isn't a question, Caesar, but I gotta say, I mean, if I was being straight up, and I look at like, I've played very few, I would say like catered to Asian audience games, or very few anime styled games. When I first saw like I don't even know that graphics is the right word. Like art style is like I wonder if this will be a game for me. But listening to you talk game theory, dude, I don't even care what you slap on to make it look like. The game theory is so freaking interesting to me. This might be the most interesting conversation I've ever had about game theory. I'll be straight up. That I'm like, dude, I want to mess around with this game now. I don't care what it looks like. Just let me play the design that you guys are building. That's so intriguing to me.
And that's the funnel. The funnel has to be that the game is so accessible and it's so simple, but yet how much complexity do you want to, like, by you being more competitive, does the game scale competitively?
Right.
And that's what, we focused on, right? Not if the game becomes more competitive. right? It's if you want to make it more competitive, it doesn't scale
Exactly.
infinitely. Because there are certain games that are like more infinitely more difficult, right? Easy to learn, hard to master. Fuck that. It should be easy to get in and infinitely competitive. If you want to go hardcore, you can go hardcore. And that starts with a simple but super robust structure, right? And that's why poker is a game that hasn't existed for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. It's existed for like since the beginning of America, right? From France, right? And all the variations that came along with it. And it goes in cycles up and down, stuff like this, but that game is El Robusto, man. You know? Yeah. Because of the
And I think a lot of
technique
people
element as well.
sort of downplay the necessity for a game to be like that. I think for games to really catch on and really become this massive sort of iconic time period in gaming history, like I know Fortnite and Warzone will be, they really need to have that in to where anyone could pick it up and be like, oh, wow, this was fun. Let me go again. Oh, wow, that was fun, but now I learned a little better. Let me go again.
Yes.
And I think that's very underplayed for a lot of games, especially in Web3. I think a lot of people are just focusing on like, hey, you can come make money. And I feel like that's not going to last for a lot of games. Like, people are just going to get tired of it. Because I know there's games that I've played from early on that have been in the space that I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. But in my mind, I already knew what was cool about it is that I was earning. And when that sort of became pointless because, of course, everybody was grinding that token and it went to zero, it sort of started feeling like work. And I was like, dang, I'm only checking in and playing this game because like I got used to it, but it's not that fun anymore. So I think with you guys sort of having that idea of like, hey, anyone could try it out and then they can get hooked to it. And just sort of like that analogy you made earlier, casinos aren't looking for gamblers or trying to make gamblers. They're looking for the ones that already are, maybe don't know it. You're looking for those players that, hey, maybe they've never played something like this because it's a very unique game like you mentioned. But once they try it and they get hooked into it, that's the player that you were looking for. But now looking into like, because obviously you've had a lot of experience in game theory and game development. What brought you to Web3? What brought you to the blockchain? What aspects of the game that you're building could only be built on the blockchain, or could all this be built in Web2, but you saw something in Web3 that really enticed you to build here?
That's a fantastic question. And the thing that I was doing was actually in 2017, I sold my fintech company to Alibaba CP Group. Okay. I had a good exit. My wife decided to spend all our money in New York City, so we moved there. And I had kind of semi-retired a little bit, but, having been from the casino and gaming regulation space and stuff like this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hell. And so I'm, trust me, casino is not a good thing. Like the net benefits are fucking shit for society. Anyone who wants to argue with me, we'll fucking argue, right? No problem. I'll fucking deep you fucking down in the dirt, on this particular argument. But so I was in microfinance and I created a digital microfinance crypto platform and I was going to roll it out with these NGOs, but it was the middle of the pandemic. And so, the NGOs were basically on lockdown as well. So I put that aside for a moment and I was like, okay, well, what other marketing channels could we use? And Axie Infinity was blowing up at that time. During the pandemic, anyways, we're going to launch this microfinance site. And then, basically we were looking for a new marketing channel, and that was basically Axie Infinity. But nobody wanted to work with us for marketing. They just wanted Axies, right? And then having my background in gaming, I'm like, okay, fine. Let's just buy some Axies and do a scholarship and then, use them as marketing channel. But we ended up doing a 300-person Axie scholarship. I ended up reading them for like a month and a half just so I could understand the game. Because once I got into it, I was like, fuck, this is really cutting edge shit, right? This is new stuff. But the craziest thing was that we got in at like something like April of 2021, right? And you know what happens by August? It blows the fuck up, right? So April, like I'm breeding, May we start, and the scholars are making 2,200 and we're making 2,200. So they're making 4,200 a month, right? And I didn't give them the fucking base Axies too, right? I wanted them to be somewhat competitive, right? Just because that's my own pride, right? I want my guild to be a little bit competitive, right? And then I'm like, holy shit. Like this is direct access to distributed capital to people who are locked down in the pandemic. And then boom, and then ultimately they made 2.2K, 2.1K the next month, and it just fucking nosedive. The next month they made like 1,200. Next month they made literally like 600. than like 200. And I just gave them the Axis. Good luck. Right. But that's when it started. And I realized, you know, number one, what the flaws with Axie Infinity were. And number two is that I saw for the very first time what Web3 really could be. So if you ask me what Web3 is outside of gaming, I have no fucking idea. But for me, Web3 in gaming and what that represents is the first time a truly independent digital asset can really be there, right? So we talk about digital assets being swords or whatever like that or whatever, but they're not. Like, you make money from a sword from selling it on eBay, right? Or you can make it from having a better weapon to grind and, you know, get some more gold and selling that on eBay, right? But they're not really income bearing within the game itself. And so I know a lot of influencers and, content creators, they say, well, the best thing about, you know, Web3 is that you can trade your assets. It's not. Because number one is that I have like at least like $1,000 of dance emotes on Fortnite, okay? And I'm happy with it.
Got so many, man.
Yeah, I know you must have so many. I honestly, for my kids, I mean, they must have spent 2,500. Like, you know, I'm like, why the fuck am I getting these charges from Epic? Right? Mommy said it was okay. And I asked mommy, she's like, yeah. I said, like, one season pass was okay, right? They got the credit card and they enabled it, right? But for the most part, like, unless the game is fucking good, those digital assets are worth shit, right? So ownership is not really the key point here, right? It is a game that can perpetually use these assets in something like in the fullness of that. Actually, they create your own digital empire, right? So when we talk about like what Web3 games really should be, it should be, you know, these gameplay tokens that you mint through your gameplay that you want to mint because you enjoy the game, and you invest these tokens into your in-game assets, which make your gameplay better in some way, not necessarily pay to win, but it gives you a better positioning, right? Whether that's expanding clans or whatever like that. And I think that Web3 gaming for me is the first instance of a truly native digital asset. Because, you know, we always talk about like how everyone wants to tokenize real world assets into, you know, blockchain, right? But it's not enough of a benefit to just verify these assets or have more liquidity for rental properties, right? Who gives a fuck, right? Because they're just a shadow, or they're more liquidity on the chain. But for it to fully exist on chain and have fucking value, regardless of what's going on in the real world per se, wow. And that's what truly excites me, man. Like, by far, truly digital empires. Like, imagine like in our game, how we expand. And, you know, this is part two of our, you know, like our game is that, you know, we're creating this ecosystem where you can build out your own clan. You can buy, you know, NFT gambling licenses from us and set up your own gambling den, or you can buy, you know, a racehorse track or make a bookie, right? And the funny thing about it is it's all under this kind of mafia universe. So in our game, you will be able to bribe the other esports teams to throw the games, okay? Right? Because it's not going to be betting on like, you know, just the general thing. It's going to be what's in it. But imagine this, like everyone's bribing the other team to throw the games in like this like 16-person tournament. How fucking hilarious is it? And then there's the bookie who's like taking bets on all this shit, right? And you can fucking bankrupt them. Yeah,
you guys are not just you're not just the Yakuza girlfriends. You are recreating the entire mafia in a way that is like actually role played. Man, I think that's fascinating because I mean, I've actually used this example. I remember like a year ago, I used this example in a show talking about like, why does digital ownership matter? And we talked about the fact that like Warzone existed for, I don't know, X amount of years. And then they just said, screw you guys. Everything you bought, we're actually just deleting, and we're launching Warzone 2, which was down to the code, a carbon copy. It was the same exact thing. There was no difference of code. It was the exact same game. They just slapped 2 on it and deleted everyone's assets. And we use that as an example of like, shoot, man, imagine if you owned those and you can keep using them. But if they shut down Warzone 2, then you can't keep using them. So like there is a gap in this debate about digital ownership. Well, in order for it to have value, like there has to be something behind it. That doesn't mean real world things. It could be digital. We've seen that happen in very rare circumstances. So I think it's fascinating to talk about like, well, what does it mean if a game shuts down and it doesn't have, how do you take item A from game 1 and make it worth something in game 3. I don't know. Yeah, what are you guys doing?
Well, no,
you talk about ecosystem, you talk about metaverse, you talk about mafia. How do you make these assets actually matter as they traverse through different worlds?
So the reason why your assets don't last long is because the game dies. And so the publisher's not making any more money, right? But what if, not a metaverse, but an ecosystem of games that are interconnected that basically, like, as you grow out your mafia, the way you grow out your mafia is that we give you many more ways to earn. So the first thing is, you know, you can put up a casino, you can put up a sports bookie, but then you can buy like horses, right? And set up your own racetrack, right? And these are all modules, right? And then for the horses, we have a fucking hilarious setup where you can like inject them with performance enhancing drugs, but then it increases its chance of getting a heart attack during the thing.
You're drugging your horses.
Yeah, you can drug your horses, right? And then increase the percentage that, you know, the life of the horse, they might have a random heart attack. Or you can bribe the other horse trainer directly with a private DM to trank the horse, right? Like shit like this, right? But then if people are engaging in the game and it's fun and it's creating revenue, right? Then you continually build out this ecosystem that is still generating revenue, still generating fun, and still generating more worth to your asset. Because now your asset can be used in like fucking 30 games that all are income bearing that, you know, add to this macro game, right? And this macro financial empire.
So that makes me think, again, back to Fortnite. Don't know why we keep using this. I think we use Fortnite as a reference all the time because if they successfully instituted a digital economy, it could be, I think they're like, it's a great model for it. But Fortnite in the last month announced like, hey, we're not just Fortnite, the Battle Royale. And they actually announced this way long ago, but they kicked it off officially. Like we are trying to build an ecosystem of games that people just interact with the Fortnite universe. It's a metaverse.
Yep.
And that term is so like overcoined that I don't think people understood what that was intended to mean. And then they just released 3 games that you access inside of Fortnite that people that don't play Fortnite are playing. And that is Lego Fortnite, which is a completely different game, but it's inside the same universe and your assets cross over. That's Rocket Racing, which was built not by the Fortnite devs. It was built inside of Fortnite and Fortnite Unreal, which is like their take on Unreal 5 because they own it. And that was the devs from Rocket League. So different race car game. And then they used the devs from the original Rock Band games, and they just released their own version of like Guitar Hero Rock Band inside of Fortnite called Fortnite Festival. All completely unique games. And I don't think any of us that were playing Fortnite 5 years ago thought Fortnite would get there. But it's that same idea of like, look, the skin that I bought 5 years ago for Fortnite Battle Royale, I can use in some instance in these other games. The problem with Fortnite is it doesn't actually have any inherent value and there's no money-making aspects.
That's right.
That's where you guys come in. Similar concept, right? That idea of a universe which encompasses multiple games with crossover elements. The difference being you own those elements and you can profit in-game from those elements in an actual realized digital economy.
Yes, and so this is where there's a very salient observation you just made an example. Actually, the reason why I say that is because most Web3 developers are still thinking in a Web2 mindset in the sense that like whatever they're doing, Fortnite can do it better, right? Because ultimately, where do most of these games generate their revenue from? NFT sales, right? It shouldn't be that you generate the revenue from NFT sales. It should be you generate it from the interactions of the players. And so when we set up this metaverse, who are you playing against? You're not playing against the house. You're playing against other clans competing, and it becomes this massive PvP thing, right? Where they're trying to extract money from everybody else, right? And if you think about it, is that our first game is meant to be like the Federal Reserve. That's where you mint out your funds to invest in the rest of the ecosystem, right? And then when you mint it out there, then it becomes this massive fight here. And it's the NFTs are generating revenues for yourself and so on and so forth. But we don't get the revenues really from the NFTs, right? We get the revenues from you upgrading your NFTs for you to fight more, right? And so the revenue really comes from, in the end, the transactional fees. So for instance, like you do your sports bookie thing and you're successful as just a sports bookie, or you're a team owner and, you know, your team's not corrupt, so you actually, actually win some races and stuff like that, right? Every transaction that happens that we're facilitating, we'll take, a 4%, platform fee, right? And so then it's like a matter of like, okay, so they're taking their 4% platform fee. Okay. Am I still able to invest and make more money through the wins that I'm making that basically, are more than these 4% for platform fees? Just like when you play poker. Okay. You go to a poker room and it has like whatever, a 10% rake per hand, or it has like $6 per like round in a live table you have to pay. Fuck, I can't beat the rake. I'm not going to play the game. But if you can beat the rake and you can beat the players, fuck, you're going to stay in and keep playing. Right? So it's this movement away from us trying to extract from the players, but rather the players trying to compete. And through that act of competing and winning from each other, do we just take a platform fee? Right.
Right.
And if
so you're not trying to sell an item once. Your actual revenue as a studio, where you guys are incentivized, is to keep players competing with each other.
Exactly.
Which is, I think, super healthy for an ecosystem, rather than you guys getting, there's no nicer way to say it. There are so many game studios that are just predatory, that they make their profit in a way that screws over the players. You guys make your profit, ideally, the world you're crafting, is you make your profit when players are healthily competing with each other,
and
which then drives them to continue competing with each other.
Exactly.
And drives you guys to introduce new ways. Yeah, and that drives you guys to introduce new ways for them to compete with each other. So it's like this cycle of more content, but in a healthy way.
Yeah, and that continued revenue through live ops and new games gives us every incentive to keep building this out forever, right? Soon we'll have spaceships fucking, the first racing game that we're going to put in is actually a nod to the hamster racing. So we'll first start with hamster racing, and then the next one is dogs, then horses, then F3, then F1, and then maybe rocket ships, right? And then the element of it, like, I want to do like chariot racing. I know this is like way far in the future, right? Where like you can actually have your guys on there, and then they can have like Fortnite guns and they can shoot other chariots on the way, like Ben-Hur style or whatever like that, right? And then you can expand it that way. That is, like not only just fun, right? But giving them more opportunities to create their actual own digital earning empire. And that, I hope, is something that, Matthew, you get on and then you can pass this off to your grandchildren, because it becomes now like what kind of EVE Online has become, but even more so, because the thing about with EVE Online is that, I love those guys and I know they're doing, a Web3 game as well, right? But that game is complex as fuck, right? And, a
lot of people call it like a spreadsheet simulator, right?
Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is you still have to be very aware that, a game needs to start off with that simplicity, right? So that it's a wide funnel, right? So players can engage in the way that they want to engage. And then, obviously for a certain level, certain point, like, of course, if you're very early and you're the oil boon and you have like this massive empire, yeah, okay, no one's going to catch up with you there. But for every new game that you set up, for instance, we set up a new esports league for Counter-Strike, okay? You're going to go out there and recruit Counter-Strike players who are going to play in this intra-league, right? Knowing full well about the metrics. And they could win by just getting bribed all the time, like whatever, and that's where we create digital employment, not digital slavery. Because the one criticism I have about Axie Infinity was it was fucking digital slavery. You had the guilds, right? And then basically forcing these guys to play X amount of games and, earning whatever kind of revenue they could earn, but there was no upside for them. Like in this particular case, if these guys are, creating their best esports team within the intra league and they make enough money, well then fuck, they'll make their own team, right? Not based off of the current esports, real world revenue model of getting more sponsorship and fucking everybody over these higher salaries, rather than you give them the ability to have ownership within the ecosystem, right? And then start making money their way. Like even like
I'm driving the team. So with that in mind, because I think that's very interesting, right? And I think that's an approach that a lot of games could take inspiration from, right? I feel like a lot of games in Web3 hide their sort of game behind a like, hey, you want to play, you need $1,000 NFT or a pass in order to even get started. But I think the idea of like, hey, you know what? If we just make the entry super simple, super affordable for a lot of players, and then you incentivize them like, hey, you want to get better, then there's different levers and mechanics that they can then spend on to get more competitive, to get an edge over other players, become sort of a higher skill level because they want to, not because they have to, but because they want to. They want to have that edge over everyone else. Then that's where you really get a lot of people spending. What does entering your game ecosystem or sort of your game world look like? What does a player need? If me and Matthew wanted to play today, do we need an NFT? Do we need a pass? What do I need to get started playing? Can I just start playing for free? What does that look like, and how can people get involved in your game?
So right now for the beta, it is NFT gated, but once the pre-beta, for the testers and stuff like that. So if you come and you want to play right now, we can give you like a guest account or a demo account or alpha tester account, and you just play, right? But for when the game launches, there's going to be 2 avenues, okay? There's going to be a non-NFT avenue, and there's going to be an NFT avenue. So basically, NFT avenue, you start engaging, you can buy accessories and things like this to, create and start setting up your clan. But if you just want to play for fun, you can just play for fun, get good at the game, and then actually have a record. And then maybe another team will say, hey, I'd like to recruit you for our clan, right? And then basically, you start earning that way. Or you enjoy the game, you buy the NFT, and then you start kind of building it out that way. So there is a sense, though, that I want to be very clear that it's not there is a certain level of investment the player needs to do into the game in order to really participate in the game, just like real life, right? If you want to play a totally free-to-play game, this is not it, right? But where the entry points are, it's not necessarily with the main game. It's like with the ecosystem later on. Just like when you saw with Dookie Dash, players would actually hire pro gamers to get them a better score. You as an owner, right, eventually you're going to have like 10 different ways that you're making money in your criminal empire, right? You're going to have a racketeering thing, and you're going to have, a sports bookie thing. You're going to have like a sports league, whatever like this. And for that, you're going to hire people. You're going to hire people that are going to be managers, or you're going to hire people that are going to be players. And then there's going to be different entry points within the game where it will be totally free for that player because you are hiring them to be part of your digital empire, right? But I want to say that it's not to create FOMO or anything like that, but like anyone who comes into our game early, and that's our core user base, I want them to be rewarded. I want them that if they put in the time and the effort to believe in this vision, to work with this vision, that they should be rewarded. And, later on, like we will provide opportunities for people to, because they're, good at this particular game type to come in, and whether it's like FIFA or whatever like this type of like sports leagues that we put in that, they come in there. But, right now, we will have the ability for you to trial out the game and then play not really for tokens, but once you buy the NFT, you can, or be recruited into someone who has, X amount of NFTs and, wants you on their team.
Play their team. Yeah. Join their gang.
Exactly. Join their clan. Right. And ultimately that's where it is. We're creating a full on digital economy that is self-sufficient. Right. And that's what I think really, when we're talking about like sustainable economy, okay, the reality is if you have one single game and you're trying to make a sustainable economy, it's impossible, because that single game is, what is it fundamentally? Communism. It's essentially designed economic system. How the fuck does essentially designed economic system work? It doesn't. It does not work, right? Because
all the commie bros are offended right now.
All the commie bros are offended, right? Or Gorbachev, he was the reformer. Stalin is like pissed off.
I know. I'm sure there's a sect of commie bros in crypto gaming. I know they're there somewhere. We see you.
Yeah, but where the beauty of capitalism comes in is the free allocation of capital, right? It can't be done in a single game. But if you have a series of, controlled like economies here, but they're all interlinked at the ecosystem level, right? Then those linkages become non-centralized economy, because how you decide to link a fantasy sports betting system with like a social casino to like this kind of racketeering thing, that's up to you how you manage it and how you allocate your resources, and then it becomes a real economy. Right, and then you can make it sustainable, right?
And how far along are you in sort of that vision? Because I mean, I know when we started talking earlier, I can't believe it's already been an hour. But when we first started talking, it was sort of like, hey, we wanted to build the mechanics, wanted to make sure that the game loop was addictive, it was fun, people wanted to play it. And then we start adding the skin to it. We start adding the makeup. We start making it look nice. And that's sort of what you guys just started. You said back in May. How far along are you guys sort of in the beautification of your game so that be complete to then allow you guys to start working on this sort of ultimate vision? How far along would you say that ultimate vision is away?
We're done. We're actually fucking done. Yeah. So the beta gameplay is all done. You know, the other parts to it is like, the marketplace and all the other like blockchain aspects of it. But like, we have a US distributor, who we're working with, and they came to us because they were looking for Web3 games that were actually done and they couldn't find very many, right? Like totally done, right? So the reason why we're totally done is, again, for me, finishing this first game is actually as if I'm just starting the journey, right? So this is, if you can say, this is the minting game. This is the game where the MAYG token fundamentally gets minted in a way that's inflationary but somewhat controlled, right? That will fuel the rest of the games. And so we're looking at the launch of the beta for, I would say, the end of January, right? And then basically the first ecosystem games will come out in June, July, right? And then from there on, if the game is doing well, obviously it's going to fucking snowball. Because fundamentally what I'm doing is a fully original game for the mint, but all the other games are like known games. We could even do like Angry Birds versus Angry Birds if there's enough like, competitive element to it, right? And then, ultimately the beautiful thing about being in 2023 is there are so many games that are fantastic and they've been done. They're done, right? But if you start off with the clone game, you're fucked, right? But in terms of the ecosystem, we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. We're just basically going to take what the best of the best is and co-op it and adjust it so it fits in the ecosystem. Yeah, so we are, I was talking to this one fairly prominent Web3 builder investor in the space. And, I honestly don't like to shill when I'm on any of the spaces because I want to have a discussion, right? And, he looked at our game and he's like, okay, girls blowing each other up, anime, whoop-de-fucking-doo-dah, right? And I said, and he was like saying, there's no game that solved the economic thing. There's no game that's complete. And I go, hey, you want to try my game? And he knows me, but it's like always like, Sinjin, the fucking foul mouth, cursing old fucker who hates everybody. But yeah, okay, fine, let's try it. He tried it. I talked to him about the vision, and he said, holy fuck, you're actually 99% ahead of everybody else. You are very fucking bad at the Web3 narrative. Yes. Because my start for the Web3 narrative starts now, right? Where we're talking about the ecosystem and really solving the very fundamental point first is that if you don't have a way to make a sustainable economy, open economy, right, then anything you're going to build out is bullshit because it just will collapse. As soon as you have token oversupply, and if that token is the main reason why people are in your game and that gets fucked up, then all your development's done. So in some ways, it's like this. You could have gold mines and diamond mines and like fucking pristine water you can bottle and stuff like that, right? But if your currency is fucked, you're fucked. Perfect example, Venezuela. Venezuela has some of the biggest oil reserves in the world. Tons of natural resources, right? But their currency is fucking shit and they're fucking sanctioned by the United States. So can they really do shit? No, they can't. Because ultimately, what is money? Money is incentivized, packaged, and tradable, right? So once you have it packaged and tradable, then all the resources can be mobilized. Because ultimately what capitalism is the efficient allocation of capital. If you don't have that structure in place, fuck, man, the gold mines are not going to get worked at. The diamond mines aren't going to get worked at. You ain't going to pump out that oil, right? So once we solve that, which I believe I totally have, and the reason why I'm saying this is because most Web2 game developers, they've only worked in a closed economy, right? So they don't really know what a truly open economy is because some part of it is closed so they can control it or roll it back, right? But since my background's in casino and poker, right? It's all fucking open economy, man. If we don't manage it properly and people don't redeposit or they can't withdraw properly or they can't like have a fair game, the game's dead, right? So for me, in the game development side for open economy, it was just kind of one step I had to kind of do, whereas a lot of other Web2 developers are having to take 2 steps. But that first step to understanding what the ramifications for a world economy or open economy are, it's a huge first step, right? And luckily, I've already taken that by doing all the sinful things I've done in the past. But hopefully, I'll redeem myself in Web3.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense because I think it is very true that step from like a closed economy where, and I'll take an MMORPG as an example. I used to play a lot of New World, and if they accidentally messed up and allowed this one specific farming way to just get unlimited gold and people were able to spin out hundreds of thousands of gold a day, super simple, people were taking advantage of that. And it's super easy for a like New World to just say, hey, you know what, we're going to pause that. People aren't able to do that. And then, sure, they have that a set amount of gold, and that gold doesn't have any monetary value. That happens in a Web3 game where those tokens are actually tied to something that they can sell them, cash out in. You break pretty much everything that you had. You lose all the liquidity that you raised, all that money that you had in your liquidity pool. You messed that up just because you didn't take that into consideration. I feel like you have to be 10 times more careful in the Web3 space when you're creating something like a faucet for these tokens, because if people just figure out how to game that, you're in big trouble. So I think it makes sense, and I think a lot of games are going to be learning that lesson very hard in the next coming years, because a lot of games are still focusing on like, hey, we're still an idea, we're still making things beautiful, but if you don't have those mechanics ready, it's going to come and bite you in the ass. And so I feel like that's going to happen to a lot of games. Hopefully people learn faster than most. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy time when. And
I got to say, not blowing something up your asses, boys, but you guys are fucking fantastic. I mean, you guys really know your shit, and you guys are real gamers. I fucking hate talking to these guys, and they're like, we're a gamer, and I play hyper casual, and like, let me ask you why mobile is going to be mainstream. Like, shut the fuck up, man. And I can tell you're not a fucking gamer. Like sometimes I see some other like developers, they're not gamers. They're maybe digital NFT collectors or whatever like that, but whatever, so on and so forth. And you're exactly right. Like if you can solve that sustainable economy thing, which we believe that we have in this first game, the rest is fucking easy peasy, man. Like this ecosystem stuff is just about fucking scale, but it's not difficult because it just scales, right? But if you don't have the minting part done first, none of it happens. Because the bigger it gets, the more likely it's all going to fucking collapse. So yeah, you guys got to, hey, I got to say, you guys are fucking fantastic. You guys should interview all these games that I talked about before, because I think
I will write that list down. I actually will.
Yeah,
I would love
to have these kind of questions, because this is next level, right? Rather than like the Twitter spaces and being on with these fuck nuts who are like saying like, whatever the new meta is, like, how is that going to change your game design? Motherfucker, I don't make a game based on like the current trend, because I had to design the game 2 fucking years ago to get to this point, right?
Yep. And by the time you release the game, the trend will be gone anyways. You can't predict what next year's trend is. Just make something good, dude. Make something sustainable. Make something that can last.
Exactly. You got to lead, because that's where we're at. We're in a point where the innovation has to lead, and it has to be 10x. So anything that I'm doing that wasn't going to be 10x, why the fuck am I doing it? Because then the trend will be better than something that's 2x, right? So yeah, you guys are fucking great. I love speaking to other gamers, like seriously. Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, we love games. We love games. We love crypto. We're definitely degens, but we love sustainable things that aren't going to be dead tomorrow. And it's funny. I mean, I feel like I resonated with that friend of yours that was like, well, not really into the anime. I mean, Caesar watches anime. So you won him over. But him interviewing or talking with you was, he was the one that was like, oh, dude, Shrapnel said we got to talk to these guys. Look at this game. And I was like, well, I don't know that I would normally pick that game up. But then I talked to you and I'm like, holy man, yeah, you're onto something. I think we've talked to probably 30 games by now. And I don't know that anyone has, like, there's been games where I'm like, oh, that's more of my genre. But I don't know that anyone has understood game theory the way that you're breaking it down right now. And so to me, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm really excited for people to hear it, just because, yeah, dude, if I'm thinking about what games or ecosystems can last in a forward economy, there has to be more than just gameplay. There has to be more than just NFT mints. There has to be more than just marketing. Like, it's a conglomerate hodgepodge mess of all the right ingredients. It sounds like you guys have the right ingredients mixed in.
I'd hope so, because coming from the poker industry, like when you kind of do shit in poker, you are pissing off some of the most highest IQ motherfuckers on the planet. There's a forum site called 2+2, okay? And the very first time I had to post on there, I was fucking shitting myself, because these guys, when they hammer you like a motherfucker, man, right? And if you can survive poker and you can create an ecosystem where it's sustainable with these fucking sharks, right? Then that definitely gave me a leg up where, like, in order for a poker site to survive, your clientele is some of the most intelligent guys out there who know game theory. And you're going to create the playground for where they build, for they play. Holy fuck, man. Baptism by fire. And if you make a mistake in like casino or poker, right, and you do the bonus wrong, man, these guys will figure out in like fucking less than a millisecond. And by the time you turn off that promotion, you're down $2 million fucking dollars. And if you don't pay it out, right, your name's shit too, because you promised it, right? So like, I would say like having that kind of experience in poker really made me realize like what the scope here is. And it's not easy. It's not this trifecta of, okay, how do we create a sustainable game and a fun game and, a lasting game, okay? A fun game is motherfucking difficult, but then a sustainable economy is 100x more harder than a fun game, okay? It's like launching a new fucking economy, okay? And then making it all sustainable together, then you've just multiplied it by 5 as well. So, like knowing the scope in the very first place, how difficult it is. And that's why I said there's only probably around 7 other founders, which I really, really respect because they are at that level, right? And, I don't blame the market for where it is because how did it all start off with was, the GameFi really kicked in where, make a smart contract and here, like DeFi Kingdoms. Oh, fuck, everyone's making money and this looks like a good enough game, right? But not sustainable, right? Yeah. And, that's where it ends up being, right? I mean, if your game is subject to the secondary market's whims and cycles, what the fuck? Because games fundamentally are recession-proof. Why? When you're happy, you play a game. When you're not happy, you fucking want to play a game, Yeah. And it should survive on that. And if it can survive on this fucking unlimited matrix energy source, because it's fucking fun, then you can be something more than the market. The market should always be something that supercharges your game. You shouldn't be like beholden to the market, right? And then that's where I feel that the failing is because then everyone's like short-term market incentives, short-term market like gains, and then that's going to be it. But you're missing the whole point that if the game like works, then you got that fucking Iron Man pulsing fucking, energy source that, can fucking make a whole new digital world. And, going back to that one point is that's what I believe. I believe Web3 and Web3 gaming can make the first truly independent, digital assets.
That's very interesting because I think that's very true. I think once we get Web3 gaming to the point that I hope it should be and it will be, these games, these economies, hopefully the one that you're building, won't be tied to, oh, are we in a bull market or are we in a bear market? Oh, because we're in a bear market, this game's not going to do well. No, it will be completely independent in its own thing because it's fun, because it's sustainable. And I think what you're doing right now is you're not only just tackling that, hey, is this game fun? You're going to say, hey, we got a game that's fun. Is the game sustainable? Is the economy sustainable? Yes, it is. But on top of that, you're going to build this entire world and this entire ecosystem based on those two fundamental ideas of like, hey, we nailed this down. Now we can build out. And I mean, at the end of the day, we'll know in a couple of years if you were right, if you were like, hey, we actually had it sustainable. And if you do, this could be the start of something huge. This can be the start of something that can then be copied and pasted. I mean, think about how many games have come out since Fortnite really got it right to sort of just copy what they're doing. And now with a lot of people moving into the extraction shooters, like DMZ, like Shrapnel, it's like everybody's just like, look, what's going to be the next thing and how we can capture that. If you really capture that, hey, this game is fun and the minting is sustainable, think of how many games are going to spin out of that and how much sort of innovation and inspiration people are going to take from what you guys build in the coming future. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, and it's super exciting to me because, like, for fuck's sakes, man, I would love to play a fucking MMO that fucking really works that I can pass my fucking castle on to my sons, and my sons could pass it off to whatever, you know, like the royal Jung family of you know, Esteraria or whatever the fuck it is, you know. Wow. And then we enter into this thing where truly you could have a fully fucking digital gaming career, right? Because it actually creates jobs. It actually creates a product. It actually has, you know, production value. And then think about where games are going with AI, you know. You know, they always say there are two things that have pushed, you know, technology forward, especially in the internet age. Number one, porn. Number two, gaming, right? Now, porn's always going to be there, right? But like, you know, but porn is pretty base and it's pretty two-dimensional, to be honest, okay? So they're really early adopters, and, you know, obviously everyone wants 8K fucking porn. And when there's 12K porn, fuck, man, yeah. You know, all the monitors are going to be fucking 12K, right? But gaming is something that is so fucking robust, right? That, you know, you can build the whole fucking shit on it. And AI in, you know, you're going to allow, think about this, where you had this quest for the best AI for chess, right? But what they found out is that the teams that has the best results, even against AI, is human AI, like human directed AI, right? So as games start to incorporate AI, I mean, holy shit! And then when we get to quantum,
have you looked at speaking of that, have you seen AI Arena yet?
Mm-hmm. I really respect that team as well.
They're rad. They, I mean, yeah, they're AI engineers before they're game developers.
Exactly, yeah. And they pivoted because they wanted to find a use case for it, yeah. No, they're doing it very smart, yeah. That's one other team that, you know, I think that really has real legs, right? But again, for me, the economic innovation here needs to be solved first for any of this stuff to work out.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, which is what you guys are working on. Man, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I can confidently say the longest podcast episode we've had in a while. No, not in a bad way, man. Usually it feels like, we got to hit that 1 hour mark, and so we make sure we keep asking questions. I am lost in the sauce right now. We could talk all day. This has been a pleasure, Shinjin. Seriously, a blast. If people are as excited as I am about this conversation, what's the best place for them to connect with you guys?
On Discord, or, you know, literally DMing me, or the main account on Twitter. So MAYG NFT, and just getting into our Discord. I mean, the guys who have seen through all the, you know, blue smoke and mirrors and stuff like that, and who are in our Discord, right? They're guys like you, okay? But you guys are fucking true blue gamers, right? True blooded gamers. So I love that. I think, you know, you'll see our community, and you'll see it's the same like-minded people in there. And then, you know, kind of starting from there, because again, you know, like, I don't give a fuck about the mass market, because if you don't have the core group of community first, like, it's just never going to happen. You're just chasing the dollars. And when you chase the dollars, it's very fleeting, or you just get exploited the fuck out, and then you're out anyway. So yeah. Our Twitter, MAYG,
we'll put those
NFT.
right here.
What? I'm sorry? Yeah.
I said we'll throw those right here. If you're listening, find them in the description.
And just start from there and join our Discord. And then, you know, at this point, even if you don't have our NFT, but you join the playtest and stuff like this, we give our NFTs out for free to those people who are true gamers. We've identified them as gamers. I love to send you guys an NFT of ours, right? We're at something like 0.06 or whatever like that. So it's not like pennies, but, you know, all of our NFTs we've given out has been to who we try to curate as gamers first, not so that we could raise money or anything like that. Just because, yeah, we need that core base, and I'd love to have you guys in the community, and you can change your mind about these waifu.
Yeah, you're gonna have to win me over.
Yeah.
Not my art style, but I like the theory a lot. So yeah, we'd be down. Man, beautiful conversation. Thank you for listening. If you are listening wherever you're at, make sure that you jump onto their socials, their Discord, their Twitter. It's linked below. Give these guys some love. Thank you, Sinjin. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Same as well.
And we'd love to have you back once you have some of those other stuff built out to really see how this vision of yours and this ecosystem is coming to fruition. I think that'd be really awesome.
Well, absolutely. And I think you guys will be part of that ecosystem as well. So, you know, you guys will know.
I think you convinced me.